First of all, introduce our speaker. Our speaker is the director of MIT Media Lab City Science Initiative. His research mainly focuses on developing urban interventions that enable more entrepreneurial, livable, high-performance districts in cities. So now, ladies and gentlemen, the topic is Beyond Smart Cities, the Future of Urban Mobility. Please welcome Mr. Kent Larson, Director of MIT Media Lab City Science Initiative.
So good afternoon, Taipei. It's great to be here. So I think what I'm going to talk about is a nice complement to what was just discussed at that panel. I'll try to put it in more of a social context and implications for cities in the future. This is how most people experience the larger cities today. I took this video out the window of a taxi cab in Beijing on a really good day. You see that sign there? It's all green and yellow. There's no red. On a bad day, the traffic is not moving. And in fact, we're finding that this is just not sustainable for cities. Something has to be done. And the real problem is the way that we're designing cities. This was the model. We invented this in the US. This is Los Angeles. It's low density, sprawl, separated functions. You put housing here, commercial here, industry here, connect everything by a road, make automobiles inexpensive and freely available, and make sure you have plenty of parking so anybody can park anywhere they want to go. And it's incredibly wasteful. Things are changing. These are some of the societal trends that we're responding to in our research project. 90% of the population growth will take place in cities from here on out. 70% of the energy consumption. A lot of people know that. A lot of people know this. Millennials are preferring to own cell phones and to share things. They're returning to the cities. They're not buying cars, they're not buying homes. There are new business models that are being developed in response to this. The sharing economy is huge. Everybody knows this, talked about a lot in the last panel. As evidence, Lyft was acquired partially by GM for $500 million, a ride-sharing, car-sharing program purchased by a commodity automobile producer. It's a very interesting trend. This is even more important, I think. Many European cities are actively moving away from cars. This was an article recently about 6 big European cities that are banning cars in much of the downtown areas. I took this photo though because this is in Amsterdam, when I was there a year earlier, there were cars on this street. Now you go back, there are no cars on that street in the canal. It's changing very quickly. I put my camera on a garbage can in the central square of Amsterdam, and here you can see what cities are really turning into. They're not designed for cars, they're not designed for machines, they're designed for people. And you have shared space here. You see people, bicycles, cars moving very slowly because the people take precedence, and there's mass transit moving through the area. Mostly it's about human interaction and the exchange of ideas and social ties. That's what we're realizing. As was talked about in the last panel, there's this race to get rid of human drivers in cars. Humans are incredibly dangerous. You know, we really do need to get rid of human drivers, but it's not just the safety issue. It's opening up a lot of possibilities for making cities better places. Density is a huge issue right now, and it's very interesting. If you look at this graph, you see the blue cities. These are the American cities by and large. They use a tremendous amount of energy per capita for transportation. So you see the transportation energy on the vertical axis, urban density on the right axis. So Houston is about as bad as it gets. Hong Kong is about as good as it gets. I'll be in Hong Kong in a couple of days. European cities, sort of the sweet spot, this mix of livability and density and energy consumption. And we're trying to understand what enables these very highly livable entrepreneurial cities. Now, this shows the distribution of venture funding in cities. And you can see the bigger the circle, the more venture funding. It's centered typically on the coast of the United States, Northern Europe, a few cities in Asia. Silicon Valley is number one. Boston, where I'm from, particularly because of MIT, is number two. All cities are not equal with respect to innovation. Innovation is happening in those cities that bring together ideas that enable innovation. Many mayors all over the world are thinking about innovation districts to promote entrepreneurship and startups. For the most part, they don't really know, though, what enables innovation. I think a lot of new ideas are emerging that can help them figure that out. So the big question that we're asking is, what enables three things? High-performance cities, that means how efficiently you use energy, water, other resources. Livable cities, quality of life, everybody cares about that. And entrepreneurial cities, that's about jobs and GDP and wages. These three things are most important to mayors. So let's talk about some of the ideas that I think will create more entrepreneurial, livable, high-performance cities. Mobility on demand, finding alternatives to private cars. And this is to increase density and vibrancy and human interaction. This shows the mobility modes that we think are important to have in the city. The most important one is on the upper left, which is walking. And in a tech conference like this, you know, people don't talk that much about walking, but it really is the most important. Shared bikes, dynamically routed on-demand shuttles. The vehicles in the red boxes are the ones that we've prototyped in our group at MIT. I'll just talk a little bit about our journey to develop new models of transportation in the interest of promoting better cities. It's the first project that we got a lot of attention on, the MIT city cars. It has 4 innovations: robot wheels, drive motor steering, braking, suspension in each wheel, drive-by-wire like a modern aircraft. It folds, so it occupies very little space, and front egress, you step directly out on the curb. At MIT, we like to build things, so we built a full-scale prototype with one of our member companies. We tested it on the street in Spain. You see there's a yoke. You can drive it in Hong Kong and mainland China the same day, but it's all drive-by-wire, no mechanical linkages. And we realized this wasn't pushing it far enough. We had to not only make it a shared vehicle that occupied very little space, had to make it autonomous. Then we realized in the central cities where cars are interacting with humans, you need to understand the intention of an autonomous vehicle, right? If you walk in front of a car driven by a human, you make eye contact. So this vehicle in this prototype essentially made eye contact and expressed its intention. Then we realized that we were focused on cars, and cars weren't the future. At this point in our project, these bike sharing programs, like you find here in Taipei, were just exploding. There's over 1,000 now around the world. When we started our project, there were only a handful. So we realized that we needed to push it farther and not think about cars for the city, but think about new vehicles for the city. This is the first one we did. It's a little 3-wheel vehicle that can be integrated into a bike sharing program. It folds so it occupies little space. We call it a persuasive electric vehicle because it persuades you to shift to a more sustainable mode, save energy, get more exercise. Then we realized we can even go deeper, because I do believe that the future of urban vehicles will combine these 3 features: autonomy, shared use, and electric drive. So as we were working on this project, and similar to the reduction in price that you saw for the LiDAR systems, the cost of processing for autonomous vehicles were dropping precipitously. So the first MIT autonomous vehicle, part of the DARPA Grand Challenge, $100,000, went to 50,000, 2010, 5,000, 2012. Now we can do it for about $500. MIT has a relationship with Singapore, so we tested a system that's like a driverless Uber, autonomy integrated into golf carts. So you call for the vehicle, it comes to you wherever you are. And the students had a lot of fun showing all of the things that they could do in this autonomous vehicle, like shaving and putting on a tie, etc. Then we realized, when we analyzed it a little differently, that if you focus on driving in bike lanes versus driving in traffic conditions, in other words, focus on a more limited short-term application, we have the technology available today, and there's no regulations for bike lane vehicles. So we decided to create a bike-like, not a car-like, ultra-lightweight, personal, autonomous, shared-use electric vehicle. We showed this at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2016. Now, there was an article on our vehicle that we showed there that said the message here is that autonomous vehicles are not scary. In fact, they're quite practical and can help the planet. I think right now when we design autonomous vehicles, it's a little bit like taking a horse and buggy and making a horseless carriage. And we're grafting autonomy technology onto conventional vehicles. So what we're looking at here are vehicles that are bike-like. They're not car-like. They're legal in bike lanes, not on highways. They operate at walking to bicycle speeds. They're very low-cost autonomy. They're shared use. And they can move both people and goods. This is our PEV, our persuasive electric vehicle, operating on the campus at MIT. And by the way, we took this out onto the campus, and because it's MIT, nobody gave it a second look. It was actually quite normal to see things like this at MIT. So the way that we're conceiving of this vehicle, you call for it to pick you up wherever you are. It comes to you. You get on the vehicle. You authenticate that you're the one that called for the vehicle. You can drive it. We don't care. So the autonomous operation is not so much to operate the vehicle when it's occupied by a human, although if you're disabled or you're elderly or you just prefer it, you can operate it in autonomy mode. Then you get out of it wherever you are, and it goes on its way to be available for somebody else. Now, we started by thinking that this was only for people moving. Then we realized that because of online purchasing and this just explosion of package deliveries in the city and all kinds of new resources that are being applied to delivering packages, we realized that if we design the shared use fleet to meet peak demand at rush hour, that off-peak there are excess vehicles, so we may as well use these vehicles to also deliver packages in a driverless way. In cities, you can see little tricycles like this delivering packages. Many of you have probably heard of the Amazon drone idea, where drones fly and deliver packages. I guarantee this will never happen in Taipei. You'll never see thousands of drones flying around Taipei. They're scary. The Skype founders prototyped a little robot that would deliver packages. This is where we're going with it. It has a people mode and a goods delivery mode, and it can dynamically switch from one to the other. If you look at a central city, there's one really important benefit of autonomous shared use vehicles that is underappreciated. This is Kendall Square, where MIT is, where I work. Everything in red here is a parking lot or a parking deck. Now, we modeled the transition from private to shared use autonomous vehicles. This shows the movement of vehicles in the city. If you look down here, if you look down here, Number of vehicles, parking, user time. When you shift from private vehicles to shared use vehicles, you can cut the number of vehicles by about 1/3 and eliminate half the parking. So everything in white here now can be used for other purposes. It can be used for housing, for retail, for corporate offices, but the big advantage is when you move to shared autonomous. Maybe 1/3 the vehicles can provide mobility to that population, essentially get rid of parking, and as a result, decrease the total trip time because people don't have to deal with parking. The vehicles come to them wherever they are. We did a quick model of Kendall Square looking at the potential for the city. This is a site that had 48 cars, but if you build a housing project there with micro units, I'll talk about in a minute, you can replace those 48 cars with 528 people. Much better use of scarce, valuable resources in the city, all enabled by shared use autonomous vehicles. So let's talk a little bit about housing and urban apartments, because I don't think you can disconnect a conversation about mobility in the city from housing. Back to mayors. Mayors are realizing that to remain economically competitive, they have to provide affordable housing for young people because they are the creative lifeblood of the city. This is a little diagram that shows the unaffordability of the most desired cities in the US. Silicon Valley, a millennial person, many of you are millennials, would have to make $80,000 per year more than the average salary in order to afford housing in that city. It's not sustainable. Mayor Bloomberg, former Mayor Bloomberg of New York City, advocated shrinking apartments, creating microunits so young people could afford to live in a very small apartment. He's standing here in a floor plan of an apartment, 300 square feet, taped on the floor. It was actually quite a terrible apartment in that it had almost no storage, a pull-out sofa bed that one had to use every day. So we thought, let's make it smaller, but at the same time make it 3 times bigger. Okay? That was the challenge to the students. So we prototyped an apartment that was 200 square feet, used many of the same strategies as a city home, using robotics to dynamically transform the apartment. So in this apartment we have a queen-size bed rather than a pull-out double sofa bed, a fully functional office, a dining room for 6 people, a living room for 6 to 8 people. Bathrooms take up a huge amount of space because they have to be handicap accessible. But we created a very small daily use powder room, almost like an airliner bathroom, but that could open up dynamically when you were dressing for a party or needed wheelchair access. The kitchen would double in size. We integrated lots of sensors. We experimented with interfaces using gesture and voice and touch sensors. Everything in this video was real. It was not faked. We then took it the next step and looked at a little bit bigger apartment, one that would be legal in Boston. But in this case, rather than lateral transformation, we're looking at vertical transformation. So in this case, you have a large couch in the living room. The bed comes down from the ceiling. The couch lowers to accept the bed. We think that easy is not good enough, both with mobility and with housing. The transformation, the access, the interface. Easy is not good enough. It needs to be absolutely effortless and even magical. If we can make it magical, then I think this can really scale dramatically. Also in our group, we think a lot about human activity. We found that there weren't good sensors to understand in a fine-grained way the activities of people. So we built a whole suite of little sensors, wireless sensors that could detect object movement, people movement, interaction with systems. We have one of our sponsors is IKEA. This is an apartment in IKEA, that IKEA owns in Sweden that we helped them build. Here are the little sensors on the table. We sprinkled them around the apartment. And the bouncing ball that you see here is the activation of all the different sensors in the space. This is kitchen cabinetry. That sensor was not used This cabinet door was opened a lot, this even more. From this we can get a very good understanding of how people interact with the objects, how they use space, how they use other systems. And you can do this at the scale of the city. We have a new generation of sensors that we just finished earlier this year. In this case, you can use a tablet. You go up to a sensor, may not even be able to see it. It reveals the sensor, and you can see the data that is being captured and a visualization of that data. So in these smart homes that we're thinking about, so-called smart homes, that may have hundreds of sensors, we think it's really important to reveal to the occupants where these sensors are and what they're doing, do it in a totally transparent way. We think we can also use these kinds of systems to dynamically reconfigure an office. We did this very short-term project, just a couple of weeks in our office. We called it the MIT City office. In this case, we have robotic furniture that can rearrange itself. The idea is, particularly in a co-working environment where you have lots of different companies, different people, different needs, no single configuration is ideal. It takes a lot of effort to reconfigure the space, so why not do it dynamically with robotics? So in this case, she sneezes, the Kleenex comes to her, she's been sitting too long, she gets an alert, the desk rises up, it takes her over to a treadmill, she gets exercise. Some of this we just did for fun, but to make the point that these dynamically reconfigurable spaces using architectural robotics are quite practical. We put a video of our city home on YouTube, and we had something over 1 million views in the first few weeks. We've launched a company to commercialize this approach to architectural robotics. We have a series of products that we're coming out with over the next few months, so it's actually quite exciting. At the Media Lab, we believe in deploy. We believe in getting things out into the world. We don't believe in projects just being academic projects with no impact. So we have a number of Living Lab city projects that I just want to mention here. Hamburg is our probably most impactful project to date. And if you're aware of what's going on in Germany, Europe in general, there's an influx of refugees from the conflict in the Middle East. They have to be housed, and in effect, new communities have to be built for these refugees. So we realize that the conditions where the refugees are now are totally inadequate. We're working with the mayor of Hamburg to build a tool that allows communities to locate sites and develop ideas for the refugees. This is a big platform, we call it a Cityscope table, that we built for use in Hamburg. In this project, people from the community, groups of about 30, will interact with this table. They'll look at the possible sites in the city. When they're interested in a particular site, they put this little plastic piece down on it. It then triggers that area to be blown up on another table. They can interactively explore possibilities by moving Lego pieces around and build up the attributes for a new community to house the refugees. This is a larger Cityscope model zoomed in on an area of one community. And we're working now on a series of algorithms and strategies to help these lay people in the community design their own communities. In this case, this is a prototype of a system to look at walkability, daylighting, new mobility systems. In this case, you move the Lego bricks around. We have 3 types of housing, from micro-units to luxury housing, 3 types of office work, dynamically change the density, see the impact on traffic. So if you increase the traffic, if you increase the density to a certain point, you get traffic congestion. Then we can toggle on our mobility on demand systems, allowing for a much greater increase in density and therefore human interaction. And on the right, you see the list of all the amenities, the shops and the cafes, the restaurants that are supported by that population. Agent-based modeling, in this case, the young people, the blue dots, the millennials, are in the cheap part of the city. As you move micro-units to the center of the city, you can see the flowing of millennials to mix with mid-career and more experienced people in yellow and red. And that optimal combination of people with diverse experiences, allowing them to exchange ideas and to meet in well-designed spaces in the city, will increase the probability that ideas will be exchanged and innovation will result. This, I think, is the most important thing for city, emphasizing the interaction of people. Then there's all kinds of new technologies people can use. Virtual reality is the rage here in this show. So we're looking at using tablets where you can have an individual view of the model. I'm interested in energy, you're interested in transportation, somebody else is interested in the flow of venture capital. By moving this tablet around a model, you can get your own unique view of it. We can link this to hyper-realistic renderings of the city. So the Lego table, the Cityscope, is an input device to dynamically build the city up and visualize it in multiple ways. And in this case, we have a view cube, and we fly it over a physical model and then visualize that view, in effect flying a drone over the model, of the model on the screen. We're doing a project in Boston related to mobility. Typically, when an architect like me stands up in front of a community to present an idea, the people that oppose it are the ones that come to that meeting and they all yell and they scream. And it is a terrible, terrible process. So much like we're doing in Hamburg, we're looking at a more interactive process. In this case, there were 5 new bus rapid transit lanes being proposed. Who knows what a bus rapid transit lane is? What bus rapid transit? Almost nobody. It's like a cross, actually you have them in Taipei, similar systems, cross between a subway and a bus. The people that drive hate it because it takes away car lanes. The people that take buses, mass transit, love it because the throughput is much faster. So we built 3 different platforms, the regional scale, the community scale, the street scale. This was the original prototype for the Hamburg project. As people look at alternatives, the data is updated in real time. The throughput, the cost, the number of bicycles that can be accommodated, the parking spaces. So in this case, people from the community can locate where they live, where they work, see how their commute time would change, see how many more jobs would be available in a given commuting time. The community scale, they can move different station locations, study them, look at the impact, and then also at the street scale. Jerusalem is a project we just launched last week. I spent a week in Israel. It's a very exciting project for us. This is an aerial view of one of the newer areas of Jerusalem, and it is a series of little communities, as you can see by the circles here on this plan. And it goes back to an original diagram designed in 1944 by the British architect who was in charge of Jerusalem. So you see a series of these neighborhoods on top of the hill. That little circle with the 2 dots, that means schools and shops and other activities. The idea is that each community is autonomous. We talk about autonomous vehicles, but it's important to think about autonomous communities where people live and work and play and shop and exchange ideas all in a very efficient way in a walkable community. Jerusalem is very rapidly trying to get rid of cars in many parts of the city. On the left is a street the way it was until a few years ago. They introduced a new light rail, got rid of the cars, and it's become a much more vibrant urban environment as a result. But there are a lot of new things that one can do. Light rail is the old model. I think when we're looking at dynamically routed shuttles and personal vehicles like we're working on, much lighter infrastructure that can be deployed almost immediately. So in this case, for the community, we're looking at the neighborhood scale. There are 3 modes that we're focused on. Walking, like I said, is the most important. The little personal vehicles, personal electric vehicles, like I showed. The dynamically routed shuttles, which, by the way, were talked about in the previous panel. That's all in each neighborhood. On the highway, you can platoon these shuttles and form, in effect, a train at very high speeds. They can go on the highways. So they can dynamically pick up at the the pickup point, even at everyone's home. Form a platoon, go to the destination, they all branch out and take people directly to their destination. So you can get rid of fixed stops, provide door-to-door mobility without cars. It's actually very exciting. In this workshop, we looked at how the city might be transformed. So people talk a lot about the technology of autonomous vehicles and shared vehicles, but how would it actually impact the city? This is a streetscape today photograph that I took last week. Okay, if you move to shared use autonomous vehicles, what changes? You get rid of parallel parking. You can make the lanes very narrow. You get rid of parking lots. You get rid of curbs. If you introduce bike lanes that can also accommodate these autonomous shared personal electric vehicles, you add the dynamically routed shuttles, then you can narrow the street, you can recapture that wasted land. So in this case it shows the buildings being built out, the streetscape being taken over for people. So now the city is really for the human experience, not for the efficiency of cars. Now, if you do this, you get rid of traffic congestion to a large degree, so you can begin to add density. You can add housing, and in effect get all the good things that come with density without the bad things. So for us, it's very exciting. Now, I do a lot of talks at conferences related to cities, and they typically have titles like Smart City, Green City, Sustainable City, Intelligent City, Eco City, Resilient City, Digital City, Sensible City, all these labels. Totally tired of all of that. It's really become meaningless. This is, again, what mayors care about, and this is what we're focused on, these questions. What enables a high-performance, livable, and entrepreneurial city? You increase the livability, you increase jobs and wages and amenities and better restaurants, you dramatically reduce energy consumption, and everybody wins. It's a brave new future. Join us. Lots of opportunities. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, your applause for Mr. Larson. Thank you.
Thank you.